So we are in the middle of this Bible Basics Bible class. It's a lot of Bible in the title of a Bible class, but Bible Basics Bible class. We're trying to do what I did in devotional over the course of 10 weeks. Not Friday. What is today? Sunday. 2 days ago, but the previous one, I just did all right. Here, let me just bazooka you with everything you would need, in one Bible class. But now we're breaking that down into smaller, more manageable parts and saying, okay, if I really want to know the foundational things that I got to know about studying the Bible, either personally or with somebody else, here's some of the touch points. These are things that you really ought to know. And today's is about Jesus. So you probably should know a little bit about Jesus. That's a good idea. And so Hebrews chapter 1, I think, is a great place to start. If you want to just wrap up, a lot of who Jesus is and learning about him and teaching about him, this is a good place to start. But before we even get to that, okay, the purpose of a Jesus study. Well, if somebody's interested at all in becoming a Christian, then they probably ought to know a little bit about Christ, right? Know about his character. I think you'll find that when people want to study the Bible, they're just kind of like, oh, yeah, it's about Jesus. Okay, yeah. And they skip over to that, and they're like, well, what do I have to do? And they kind of jump to a legalistic, like, well, right, but how am I supposed to live? Well, how do I get my sins forgiven? How can I ensure that I'm going to go to heaven, right? And they have some of those questions, and then we just jump over the most essential element, which is Jesus and his life. The whole point of this thing is that you would be so in love with Christ, so motivated to live like him. That's really the only way that this thing works, right? So if we jump over it, we're doing ourselves a huge disservice. But in this study, we're going to see Jesus' divinity, his God-likeness, but also his humanity, right? He had to struggle through the things that we have to struggle through as well. We'll see his love for people, but also his indignation, right? Jesus is not messing around. There's some, we get this incorrect view sometimes of Jesus that he's kind of like shepherdly and peaceful, and all the little children are running up onto his lap, and he's got a lamb in one hand and a baby in the other. It's like, no, wait a second. Yeah, that's part of it. But Jesus also had this great indignation where he would not stand for sin, and he would really let people know about it. When they were being hypocritical, he would be like, hey, you're a viper. You're a brood of vipers, and I'm going to give you the business. He didn't say that exactly, but that's basically what he said. All right. And then we're going to, see his priorities. He was a man with a mission. He didn't just come, hey, here's some ideas I got. It was like, I'm here on a mission, and we should then also share in that mission. Even non-Christians, when we read about Jesus and we look at his life, we should get a sense of awe about who he was and what he did. Even if you're not a Christian, just him as a man is incredible, right? And he's worth imitation, worth us studying him out. Okay, so let's start with Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1. Could I have somebody read verses 1 through 4? Be a good place for us to start. Dylan, why don't you go for that?
In the past, God spoke to our ancestors through the prophets at many times and in various ways. But in these last days, he has spoken to us by his Son, whom he appointed heir of all things, and through whom also he gave the universe. The Son is the radiance of God's glory and the exact representation of his being, sustaining all things by his powerful word. After he had provided purification for our sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty in heaven. So he became as much superior to the angels as the name he has inherited is superior to theirs.
Awesome. It's like 6 sermons in there, so we'll just hit like half of one. Amazing, right? So in the Old Testament, God spoke to his people in some pretty creative ways, right? He would take like a pillar of fire or a pillar of cloud or whatever, and he'd lead his people in pretty amazing ways. He comes and appears to Moses as a burning bush. He speaks through a donkey, right? There's somebody like being stupid and the donkey turns around and like starts talking to the guy. Like God's very creative and he's going to get his message across. But when we see Jesus, now it's like, hey, God's spoken in a lot of different ways before, but now he's speaking to us about what he wants and who he is and what he's like through his own son. And that's pretty incredible that he would choose to do that. So what are some other things that maybe jump out to you in this passage about Jesus? And if you were maybe teaching this study, what are some things that you might ask to draw out meaning and just thoughtfulness so we can learn about Jesus using this passage? Daniel?
I'm going to ask something like, what is the relationship between Jesus and God the Father? Jesus and God?
Cool. And let's go ahead and answer that question. So what do you see here about the relationship between God and Jesus? I brought this so that I could just sip during the silences. Alex.
It says he's spoken to us by his son and he appointed heir of all things, so he's got to have like a lot of trust in Jesus.
Yeah. So you might talk a little bit about what it means to be an heir, what it means to be an heir of all things. Of what things? Okay, yeah, that's good. Trevor?
And also in verse 3, it says that he's the radiance of God. The Son is the radiance of God's glory. He's also the exact representation of his being.
Yeah. That's a pretty good idea, Like it's not just a rough sketch of kind of what he looks like. It's not a caricature of some God likeness, but this is it, man. This is exactly what he's like, is in Jesus. Good. Good stuff. What else might you pull out of this passage, or questions that you might ask as you're discerning who Jesus is? And what he's like.
I don't know how I would really ask a question, but I would point out, like, through whom God made the universe, and by his power he sustains all things. Like, that's pretty big.
That's a big deal.
It's clearly big.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to point out, like, everything is here because of Jesus. Like, he is integral to creation.
Right. It's pretty awesome. So there's also, if you're reading through this verse, you're going to want to talk about the purification of sin, right? Because right from the get-go, we see that, after he had provided purification from sins, he sat down at the right hand of the majesty of the heaven. So that demands that we understand some of the foundational principles there. There is sin. There needs to be purification from sin. Jesus somehow is the purification for that sin. And so depending on where somebody's at and what their kind of previous understanding of who Jesus is, might not realize that that means that blood had to be shed. That meant that a perfect life needed to have been lived. And that is all answered in Jesus and who he is. And he's elevated, elevated even above the angels. He's seated at the right hand of God. This is some great imagery, but it communicates some principles that you need to understand moving forward as you learn about Jesus.
Yeah, so Hebrews definitely gives us this great overview and talking about the power of God and all of this incredible stuff. And it keeps talking about the Son, the Son, the Son. So then now, turning over to the Gospels, who is this Son? Like, let's find out more about him, how he lived his life and other things. So a good strategy to start in Hebrews and then go over to the Gospel of Mark. Mark is great for this because it's like this compact action novel, and it goes like bam, bam, bam. You've got, Jesus did this, and then suddenly this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. So it gives you really quick, if you want to know a lot about Jesus in a short amount of time, you can turn over to Mark. So Mark chapter 1.
Cool. I'm going to sit and you just do that.
Yeah.
Come on, Michelle. Yeah.
Can someone read 9 through 13 for us? Hi, go ahead.
So at the time Jesus came from Nazareth in Galilee and was baptized by John in the Jordan. Just as Jesus was coming up out of the water, he saw heaven being torn open and the Spirit descended on him like a dove, and a voice came from heaven, "You are my Son, whom I love. With you I am well pleased." At once the Spirit sent him out into the wilderness, and he was in the wilderness for 40 days, being tempted by Satan. He was with the wild animals, and the angels attended him.
Cool. A lot's kind of going on here. Just focusing on that first part, what would you say about this, or what might you ask about this first? 9 through 11. Oh, I'm sorry, Trevor.
I don't know if I was like supposed to talk on that, but I think this verse, you can also kind of use this as like a baptism verse as well.
Sure.
Because you can be like, well, Jesus had to be baptized, but I also think it's important to point out or kind of like ask like, when did Jesus actually get the Spirit? I think like, or when does it like really talk about Jesus having the Spirit come onto him, and like, why is that important?
Yeah, I think he sets that perfect example for us. I don't know that I'd really pick this verse for this specific study to kind of go down that route necessarily, but I think it's good to see that and maybe note it, and then later on when you're studying more of those things, maybe referencing back to that. But it's a great thought. I think for this one we want to keep a little bit more on his sonship, I think, in verse 11. You are my son whom I love. With you I am well pleased. Maybe talking about, like, how do you think Jesus would feel when God said that to him? And talking about, like, God's owning him as his son. God's declaring him as his son. Other thoughts about that?
I would say maybe in verse 12, it shows a lot about the humanity of Jesus and how even though he was the Son of God, he's like so powerful, like he's the son of a king, but yet he still was tempted and he still had to struggle. So I think that it's like a direct connection that he has with us as human beings.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we get in this short little passage here, we have the holiness of the Son, God declaring him, you are my son. And then right away, he's going off to the desert, to humanity. So we start to see this, God is divine, Jesus is divine and also human, which is a excellent point, and that you definitely want to bring out and talk about in this passage. Those are the main 2 points. Jesus is God's son, he's divine, and he's human.
Cool.
Then we can move on to...
We'll just go a little bit further to
Yeah.
Mark. So now you can take that. Mark chapter 1 still. Let's just read verses 21 through 28. Volunteer to do that? Jacob, do it.
Sure. They went to Capernaum, and when the Sabbath came, Jesus went into the synagogue and began to teach. The people were amazed at his teaching, because he taught them as one who had authority, not as the teachers of the law. Just then a man in their synagogue who was possessed by an impure spirit cried out, "What do you want with us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." "Be quiet," Jesus said sternly. "Come out of him." The impure spirit shook the man violently and came out of him with a shriek. The people were all so amazed that they asked each other, "What is this? A new teaching and with authority. He even gives orders to impure spirits, and they obey him." News about him spread quickly over the whole region of Galilee.
Oh, you just get a sense of, like, man, Jesus is impressive,
Yeah.
right? You just get a sense, man, this guy, he's different. He's powerful. I love it. He's like, whoa, hey, no spoilers. Like, hey, we're chapter 1 here, man. Hey, Son of God, whoa, calm down. It's kind of impressive, though. He comes into the synagogue. Something to note, you help me. What would you note? What would you note about Jesus in this? I can just tell you what I see. What do you see about Jesus? Not even what questions would you ask, but what are you impressed by? What do you see about Jesus in this that's impressive and cool, something that you want to share and point out? Kai, sure.
Just like the authority that he has, and like
Mm-hmm.
you know how even like spirits like have to obey him basically, and just like the amount of awe that he inspires like
Yep.
for everybody because of that authority and power.
Yep. People are like, who is this guy? Dylan?
And piggybacking off of that, like he just straight up walked into the temple and started teaching. Like the confidence that he has in the assurance that he has in his mission to just walk into the synagogue and start teaching because he completely believes what he's teaching is true.
Mm-hmm.
It's impressive just to be like, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I'm gonna do it no matter what you say.
Yeah, and he immediately distinguishes himself from the teachers of the law. Because it notes it here, right, that he's doing this in a different way than our teachers, than our Jewish teachers. Other thoughts here? Yeah, Chloe.
I think a lot of it is like his confidence on the way he taught to people, that it was more, like it was really impressive because it was different than most of the people did at the time. And like even if they didn't know yet, like many people who Jesus was,
Mm-hmm.
but the way he expressed like all the teachings, it was just so impressive that they compared him like, wow, like even like a teacher of the law, he teaches with that.
Yeah, with the authority. Daniel?
I would say something about how when Jesus is present, it'll get your attention.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to like be confused as to where Jesus' teaching is. Like you know exactly what it is. When he's there, people are looking at him and
Right.
focused on him. So if you don't have that same attention, like wow, this is something important that should grab my attention, I'd ask them, why don't you have that same like this is attention grab?
Yeah, for sure. Derek?
I think it's just impressive that he literally says like 6 words to a demon and takes care of the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like most people, if that happened, they'd be like, he's not even like deterred from his teaching or anything. He just goes, hey,
Be quiet.
stop.
Yeah.
Right? And then it's done. It's not even something that
Yeah.
like bothers him.
Right.
So it's like such a small issue to him that there was even a demon in the room.
Yeah.
You know, I think that just shows, again, his confidence in his authority that this was like not even a problem.
The people were just amazed by him, and they were drawn to him because of these qualities, his authority, and just the fact that he was different than the other teachers that were there. You want to take us through the next one?
Yeah.
All right.
So we get the power here in this one, and then moving on to 29 through 34, we can read that part. Derek?
As soon as they left the synagogue, they went with James and John to the home of Simon and Andrew. Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and he immediately told Jesus about her. So he went to her, took her hand, and helped her up. The fever left her, and she began to wait on him. That evening after sunset, the people brought to Jesus all the sick and demon-possessed. The whole town gathered at the door. And Jesus healed many who had various diseases. He also drove out many demons, but he would not let the demons speak, because they knew who he was.
Yeah, so how does this show us a different side of Jesus than what we just looked at a few verses before? Trevor?
It's, we get to see, in the verses before, we get to see Jesus the teacher, and
Yeah.
this one we get to see Jesus the servant.
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
find it cool because it's like, in verse 32, it's the town brought Jesus all the sick and possessed. It's not like they didn't bring
Yeah, all these people are coming bombarding him, and he, instead of like running away or getting tired or overwhelmed, he's like, no, this is what I'm here for. I'm gonna serve, I'm gonna love, I'm gonna give.
And you kind of have to think, this is like at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And the entire day, Jesus went, like, I mean, it kind of like is happening bang, bang, bang in the readings. So, I mean, it's like, he just got tested for 40 days and 40 nights, and then he comes back. and then he immediately goes into the synagogue, and it's teaching all day, and then immediately from there goes straight into healing all of these people, and it's like you get to see like Jesus is like a servant here, and he's like, I have time for you.
Yeah. I'm going to be a professor all day, 9 to 5. Then I'm going to go be a doctor for the rest of the night. Right? There's no taking a break here. Other things we notice about Jesus and his character, Derek.
I think him being a servant in this way, like he has all the power and authority, like we've established, and yet he's serving people. I think that just demonstrates his humility.
Absolutely.
So it's really important to point out, like he could have very easily been like, I am now in charge. You all, must obey me. But he doesn't. He serves me. Yeah.
What does it say about him? So one of his disciples, it says Simon's mother-in-law was in bed with a fever, and they told Jesus about her. He went to her, took her hand, and began to help. What about that part? He's a servant, but it highlights something else specific about him. Alex?
I think he's compassionate. Like, he's not serving just for the sake of serving. He's serving because he really loves people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not one of those things where he's like, yep, I know I can do this shit. Just like in a silly like throughout the door, I would imagine he's like communicating with these people. He's verbally expressing his love towards these people as he's healing them and their families and so on, and encompassing the whole town. Right.
We really see his heart. He's also relational. Like, this is one of his buddies and one of his buddies' family members, and he's like, yeah, I'm going to be there. I'm going to help. And then her heart, after the fever left her, she began to wait on them, taking, we can just definitely see how she was super serving and loving too. So, good stuff, guys.
Okay, one verse, verse 35. Let's just read that. Somebody read 35.
Very early in the morning, while it was still dark, Jesus got up, left the house, and went off to a solitary place where he prayed.
Cool. I love it. So, say it again.
A full day.
He's got a long day. But so Jesus understood, even though he's the Son of God, the perfect representation of God and his being on earth, it's like, that's a lot of reasons why he could maybe justify not needing to go spend time off alone, to have some time special, him and God. But still, he spent that time, where he went off very early in the morning, all by himself, and he spent time with God before the busyness of the day kind of overtook everything. It's a solitary place, right? He's intentional about his own relationship with God. This could be something that, let's say you're studying the Bible with somebody. This is a great point in the study to kind of ask, how's your time with God going? Where you're able to, get somewhere alone and have just some quiet time with God where you can connect. Certainly, we can use him as an example to say, hey, we ought to spend some time alone with God. If the Son of God needed it, then we certainly need it as well. Michelle?
A good question. What inspires you about this, to impact your own relationship with God? So there's a lot of little details that you brought up, but just that question, turning it back on that person.
Yep. What will it take for you to find time where you can work on your relationship with God? Does it mean that you got to wake up really early, or maybe it's you got to stay up really late? I don't know what it is, but you find some way for you to be able to prioritize your relationship with God. Good? Daniel?
I would ask going along with that question, do you think it's going to be easy for you to find time with God? Or do you think it's something that you're going to really have to work for?
Yeah. And if they're like, it'll be easy, be like, no, that's the wrong answer. You're gonna have to work hard. Let me steer you in the right direction here. It is hard. And so being able to validate that it's hard and say, well, okay, all right, now that we are on the same page, it's going to be tough. What are some things that we can do to prioritize it, even though it's going to be hard? Because it will be. Maybe. On your 13-stringed lyre, I don't know.
And then you say, teach me your way.
Teach me your way. I don't know how to do this. Flip over to the next chapter. Let's go to Mark chapter 2, verse 13. I want a sister to read 13 to 17. Monica's got it. All right.
Once again, Jesus went out beside the lake. A large crowd came to him and he began to teach to them. As they walked along, he saw Levi, son of, I don't know how to say that, Alphaeus, sitting in the tax collector's booth. Follow me, Jesus told him. And Levi got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Levi's house, many tax collectors and sinners were eating with him and his disciples, for they were many who followed him. When the teachers of the law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with the sinners and tax collectors, they asked his disciples, Why does he eat with tax collectors and sinners? On hearing this, Jesus said to them, It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. I have come to call the righteous, but to sinners.
Cool. Very good. So now we're really starting to see Jesus' ministry evolve and what his ministry looks like. Jesus calls followers, right? He calls people to follow them. His life, his teachings, what he's like, right? He's calling people to follow after him. He has the authority, the power, certainly the resume to demand that kind of response from people around him. Something that is impressive to me in this is that Jesus associates himself intentionally with those who are non-religious, right? And so he doesn't just find like the Pharisees of the Pharisees and say, hey, you guys kind of already have this figured out. You have the political power in the society when it comes to religion, so let me, connect with these guys first. No, he connects with the people that were like the low of the low, definitely not the people that are on the spiritual radar. And I think that that's important for us to understand in our ministry, that, what is said here? Well, how does Jesus respond? Siri, how does Jesus respond? No, he says, hey, it's not the healthy that need a doctor, it's the sick. He's like, here I am. I'm here to help the people that are, the low of the low. I'm here to help these guys. The Pharisees, they think they've got everything put together, but they don't. I'll deal with them later. But for now, hey, I'm here for you guys to help you figure this thing out and have a relationship with God. Anything that you see in this passage that you would really want to highlight as you're studying, Dylan?
Well, yeah, just thinking about this section as a whole, it's kind of our thing we built up over the past couple weeks, but Jesus reaches out to all people.
Yeah.
No one is exempt from his love and who he's trying to reach out, who he's trying to pull into his family. I just think that if you think about it, and if you're sitting down with a person, you really read this, and you think of the spectrum of people he's trying to reach, is that you're not exempt either. I mean, Jesus wants to have a relationship with you. He's seeking you out.
Right. Whether or not you're a Pharisee or a tax collector, everywhere on the spectrum, like Jesus, wants to connect with you. Daniel?
I think at this point it would have already been mentioned in the Seeking God study, but the necessity of hearing the call and going immediately. Levi is told by Jesus, follow me, and he gets up and follows him.
Yeah.
There's no all right, let me sit on this for a couple of weeks. Let me call my parents, ask them how they feel about me just following this guy.
Sure. Yep.
You just go and do it.
Yep. I love the immediacy there. Derek, and then Alex, and then Trevor.
I think it's cool to point out that Levi was a tax collector. His business was basically swindling people.
Cheating his own people. Yeah.
Right. And so I think it's cool to point out that this guy was reviled by society, but he trusts Jesus enough, and he feels like he can follow Jesus and maybe be something different, and maybe change.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool to see that someone who doesn't feel, or who today may feel like there's no way they're going to get right, there's no way they're going to change, trust Jesus and put faith in him that, I'm going to make a change.
Yeah. Absolutely. Alex?
I really like Jesus' mindset here, because he's obviously not thinking about other people or public perception, basically. He's just thinking about the mission, just thinking about changing people's lives, and so that's clearly seen.
Yeah, it's what's driving him, clearly. Trev?
Derek kind of stole what I was going to say, but
Cool,
it's
cool,
like, so tax collectors essentially were like the scum of
Yeah.
the Israelite people. What are Jewish people? I don't know.
Either way. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like they worked for the Romans, and there's a very like familial culture within the Jewish people, and these tax collectors were essentially betraying that familial culture. So they basically were cutting themselves off from their own people in order to take money from them and make money. And so for Jesus to have a dinner full of tax collectors and sinners, that's like making a huge statement, saying that it doesn't matter what your perception is of this person. It doesn't matter who you think they are or what they might have done to you. That doesn't matter. What matters is I'm here to heal the sick.
Yeah, it's kind of like a high school cafeteria. Like, who do you eat with? It's your class, right? It's your class of people. And that's just how it works. I mean, you eat with the people that you associate with who are on your level. So if you're with the band geeks, you are a band geek, right? If you whatever, eat with the jocks, or it's just, hey, I'm just saying, like, what was your high school cafeteria like? Like, you had a seat, well, unless you're from System Park. But when you've got 969 people in your class, like I did, like, there's clear social classes, right? And you have one seat that, like, you sit in, and you go and sit in that exact same seat every time, a lot of the time, because this is, like, my people. This is who I eat with. Anyway, Jesus, especially in that day, saying, I'll eat with these people, like, that's bold to associate at that level. So, anyway. Michelle, you want to take us through the next one? We've got 10 minutes. We're gonna keep going. Hey, this is good.
Big facts.
All right, Mark chapter 3, 1 through 6. Who can read that for us? Maybe another girl again. Claudia? Go for it.
Mark 6, okay. Another time, Jesus went into the synagogue, and a man with a shivered hand was there. Some of them were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus, so they watched him closely to see if he would heal him on the Sabbath. Jesus said to the man with the shivered hand, "Stand up in front of everyone." Then Jesus asked them, "Which is lawful on the Sabbath, to do good or to do evil, to save life or to kill?" But they remained silent. He looked around at them in anger and, deeply distressed at their stubborn hearts, said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was completely restored. Then the Pharisees went out and began to plot with the Herodians how they might kill Jesus.
Awesome, thank you. This is a super cool, powerful passage. There's a lot. It's like the whole thing is just mic drop moments, kind of with Jesus. He's totally schooling these guys. What do we see about Jesus here? About his character? Daniel?
He has unwavering convictions.
Yeah.
Even though other people are like uncertain as to whether or not it's right or wrong. He's like, no, we're going to do this the right way because he knows what's right.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. Derek?
I think you could tie this back to the word study.
Sure.
Where Jesus talks about traditions.
Yeah.
And how he cares so much more about God's heart and
right.
his will than anything, like any rule or any institution that anyone has set up. It's so much more about what does God really want? What is his heart? How can I make that happen?
Yeah.
Way more than, it's the Sabbath, so technically you can't do that.
Right. Yeah. The Sabbath was a huge deal, right? And they got so blinded and fixed on like, we can't do anything on the Sabbath because God said, but they're totally missing the heart of the good things that that can come from that. Like Derek was saying, God cares about the heart and doing good, which is lawful to do good or evil, to save or kill. But they're like, oh, they didn't say anything, because obviously do good and save life. Trevor.
I also think it's cool because we get to see even more of Jesus' heart here.
Yeah.
It's funny because in verse 2 it talks about these people looking for a reason to accuse him. But then all the way back down in verse 5, it's like Jesus is looking back at these people, and sure, he's angry, but he's also just deeply distressed at this of their hearts.
Yeah.
And it's like, instead of like, he has every reason to be angry with them. He has every reason to not like these people who are trying to falsely accuse him.
Yeah.
And yet he still cares about them. He still cares about their hearts, and he still wants them to follow him. Mm-hmm. And I think about like myself, I'm like, that's not how I would react at all.
Absolutely. It ties a lot of these things together that we've been talking about. Good point, Trevor.
Yeah, I would just be angry and respond in anger. Like, distressed about them and their spiritual livelihood? Maybe not. I'm just mad. Okay, let's read... where are we at, Michelle?
20 through 21.
Okay, yeah, we'll do that. Let's read verse 20 and 21, Mark 3. I'll do that, 20 and 21. It says, Then Jesus entered a house, and again a crowd gathered, so that he and his disciples were not even able to eat. Rough life. When his family heard about this, they went to take charge of him, for they said, he has lost his marbles. He's lost his mind.
Remind us with the next one, 31 through 34.
Okay, yeah, or 31. Okay, jump to 31. Then Jesus' mothers and brothers arrived. Standing outside, they sent someone in to call him. A crowd was sitting around him, and they told him, your mother and your brothers are outside looking for you. Who are my mother and my brothers? He asked. Then he looked at those seated in the circle around him and said, here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does God's will is my brother and sister and mother. Okay, what do you see about Jesus in these passages? Dylan, yeah.
Again, keeping it in perspective of God's desire for his people, he cared, even though I don't want to call it a sense of family like our blood families that we have in tradition, because that was something that God gifted us with as well, but he was way more focused on the family he was creating within the kingdom, far more than the immediacy or the urgency that his own blood family wanted to see him at the moment. Like, his priorities were completely different than what society had constructed, and what even one of the strongest bonds of your blood family, he was still way beyond that. He was completely focused on the family within the kingdom.
Yep. Derek?
Yeah, I think that'd be a really good question to ask somebody. Is like, where do you think Jesus' priorities are? Because it's clearly not with his family. I think he is so, like, his priorities are so different than what everybody else's were, that to them he appeared extremely radical, like so radical that even his family, the people that knew him the best, were like, he's out of his mind.
Yeah.
Like, he's crazy, because their priorities were not even close to where he is.
Yeah, I think part of that, going off of that, not only just not aligned with his family, but also aligned with his own physical needs and the needs of his disciples. He's so selfless, not eating all day and just serving and giving, but not caring about his own needs.
There's so many people around, it's hard to even find the time to, just to feed yourself, take care of yourself. That's service. Daniel?
I'm going to ask him, how do you think Jesus' family felt about his putting the kingdom first?
Absolutely, yeah. How would they feel? And then, even going further, then how did Jesus respond to how they felt about him? Right, so they thought he was crazy. How did Jesus deal with that? He basically just takes it and says, hey, my family is the one who does God's will. And if they get it, awesome. But if they don't, the kingdom of God comes first. People who do God's will come first. Daniel.
And then just follow Like, how would your family feel if you started?
Absolutely. Right. Because for any of us that would like to call ourselves disciples, we've got to, like, this is the standard where, okay, one, your family might think you're crazy, and then two, even if they do, you would still choose to put the kingdom of God first. There's some things that happen, in the church culture, that if somebody's not spiritually minded or not also trying to live their life out for Jesus, things that happen just seem weird. It's like, you give how much of your money away, like on a weekly basis? Like what? That you're only going to date this kind of person? Wait, what's going on? There's just some choices that are made because of discipleship that don't seem to make sense for those that aren't disciples, and that's okay. That's okay. Good. Anything else with this verse we missed? No, I don't think so. Yeah, he was a servant. His family thought he was crazy, but he prioritized the kingdom over his family, even though that's what was going on. We'll close out with just one more passage here in Mark 10, and we're right on time, so we'll just hit this last verse and then close out for the morning. You want to lead us to that one as well, Michelle?
Sure.
All right.
Mark 10, 32 through 34. I can read this one for us. They were on their way up to Jerusalem with Jesus leading the way, and his disciples were astonished, while those who followed were afraid. Again he took the 12 aside and told them what was going to happen to him. "We are going up to Jerusalem," he said, "and the Son of Man will be delivered over to the chief priests and the teachers of the law. They will condemn him to death and will hand him over to the Gentiles, who will mock him, spit on him, flog him, and kill him. 3 days later, he will rise." There's a lot here, too. What strikes you about this passage? Trevor?
Jesus knew what was going to happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
He knew what was laid out before him, and yet it matters that much to him that he still would do with it.
Yeah. Dylan?
Daniel mentioned it earlier, like his convictions and his determination are unwavering.
Yeah.
He has his mission, he knows what he needs to do, and he's not going to falter from it for any reason that would distract him on holy standards.
Yeah. He's leading the way to go die and doing it, just, this is what's happening. This is what's going on. So incredible. That's the main thing. But this can tie back into that first passage we looked at, where Jesus is the purification for sins. So this is like Jesus is going to suffer and die. He's foretelling this, and it's going to actually happen. This is kind of where it kind of ties together and why it's so important. Jesus is the Savior of the world. Like we need to know about him. We need to know about his life, not only so that we can imitate him, so that we can have that purification of our sins. And these passages don't tell us how that purification happens, which is an important point to bring out. But it's important because there is purification there, so we need to know about that and find out about what that means. Yeah.
Cool.
I think these are some great things that we're learning and studying. I know for the girls, there's only a couple of people that we've been sharing these scriptures with and studying the Bible with. So we're doing these lessons to equip you guys to share with your friends. So you all should feel confident talking about what it means to seek God, or what it means to listen to the Bible and learn about it, or what it means to follow Jesus. So find some friends and start doing these Bible studies with them.
Yeah, think about what we just did just this morning. We went to Hebrews 1 and then go to the book of Mark. Like, you don't need an amazing plan. Go to the book of Hebrews, read the first couple verses, then go to the book of Mark and read like chapters 1 through 3. And just walk through each thing and talk about, what do you see about Jesus? What inspires you? What's amazing? And just talk about Jesus, and the Word is going to take care of everything else. So this study helps us see the character of Jesus a little bit better. It's good to jump into what his teachings actually are. Like, this kind of talks about his life and his character. But if you want to get into what does he actually teach, Matthew 5 through 7, that's the Sermon on the Mount. That's so much great teaching about what he's actually come to teach. So that's a good thing to go to as well. You can give that as like a homework assignment if you read the Sermon on the Mount. Good? That's what we got. We'll hit another topic next week, but we'll see you down in service in 15 minutes. Bye.